social media, family, because I hope to share this on multiple social media outlets. My name is Jaquita Clayton, Mama Clayton, however you know me. I'm going to share an experience with you guys, what recently happened with our family. I want to ask, do you know a place called Clyde, Texas? Clyde, Texas, Callahan County, and a religious group called the House of Yahweh. The House of Yahweh is a place where our family member went to study some new religion he had learned. What we didn't know is the gist of what the House of Yahweh actually stood for or believed in. And now that we've realized this is bad, this is really bad, and I understand them to be a cult, nothing else but a cult. Mark Clayton was my husband, was my children's father, was killed there. And there at the House of Yahweh, someone killed him, and nobody's doing anything about it. Okay, so this is how we found out. One afternoon, early evening, late afternoon, let's say early evening, Christy from Bailey Howard Funeral Home called my daughter and asked her for her father's Social Security number. And when she asked why, it was because she needed it for a death certificate. Well, who died? So in the same breath this woman asked my daughter for her dad's Social Security number, she's also telling her that her dad is deceased. That's how we found out. Needless to say, that same evening, I called the police station there to find out what report took place, what happened, anything. And they were just pretty much dumbfounded and choked up that I even called to ask them and thought that we had been contacted. No, we hadn't been contacted. And mind you, let them tell it, he passed on April the 7th, the Friday prior to, which would have been on Good Friday. He passed on April the 7th. He was taken to Bailey Howard Funeral Home. On April the 9th, he was picked up by Matt Stubbs with the House of Yahweh, given back to them, and buried. They didn't get him on the 8th because we were told that that was their Sabbath, and so they waited till that Sunday, the 9th, to bury him, and they did. And it was not until after we were calling and trying to find out what happened, I asked the question, what papers do we need to sign? What do we need to do to get him exhumed? Because he doesn't need to be buried there. And who was in charge? Who gave whoever permission to bury him at all? Who was running things? Who's asking for this death certificate? There was just no response. Literally. I don't know. I'm not sure. You got to know. But there was just a lot of, I don't know. Needless to say, we never found out who was in charge, who was standing in authority to make the request, and who was seeking the death certificate. However, I told the director of the funeral home, Monty, to cease and desist. Everything. No one gets a copy of that death certificate. Meanwhile, the next morning, we got to town, which is west of Fort Worth, about a couple of hours away, a little more than 2 hours. We made it to town, and by the time we got there, Mark was dug up from the grave and taken back to Bailey Howard Funeral Home. So we asked, how did you do that so fast? Who gave you permission to dig him up? We hadn't signed anything. Who's in charge? That question has not been answered to this date. Meanwhile, in an attempt to make a police report, we have been unsuccessful to do that. While we were there, we got 3 different conflicting stories in terms of how he could have died. They said something about the heat related to possibly a heat stroke. They said an aneurysm because of the blood. They said a heart attack. So, meanwhile, the Justice of the Peace, Tom Runfeld, told me that he believed it was a heart attack. Well, we told him that we got multiple reasons as to why. We need to know why. Well, they sent him off for an autopsy. And the autopsy came back as a heart attack. And no blood. No blood. At the end of the day, the town is clearly working together to cover up what actually happened to Mark, because there's a lot of other details and inconsistent stories that has taken place. And I need to find out who I need to complain to regarding this medical examiner that went along with their story in terms of just having a heart attack, but negligently listed no blood. We asked several people for a police report, could not receive one. And matter of fact, the JP told me, unfortunately, the deputy forgot. He forgot to write the police report that night simply because he was busy. That was a busy night for him, and he forgot. So my question to him was, who forgets death? How do you forget to write a police report? How do you forget to call us? How do you forget death? You can't be that busy. But that was the reason. Since then, I have reached out to the sheriff department in Callahan County, because that's the county where this all took place. And we actually went to their location of the sheriff department. We didn't do it right away because technically this whole thing was like, it was eerie, it was scary. We didn't even want to go back down there. But the phone calls and the emails were not getting responded to. And whenever we talked to somebody at the police station or the sheriff department, they gave me the runaround, say, you have to come back to town, you have to come back down here. I was like, no, I'm not coming back down there, don't want to. I'm talking to you right now over the phone. And end up also sending a certified letter outlining what we knew and what we were told, and what we asked for a report number related to a homicide, not just a death investigation, a homicide. Why? Because after we came from that location to see where Mark was and get his personal things, went back to the funeral home, and the funeral home director showed me a glimpse of a photo of him on his phone and said, I don't think you guys want to see him, and if you do, you're going to have to sign a waiver. Well, I kind of looked at it a little bit, and I really couldn't look at it. It was just like gruely. It was just too gruely, and I was like, no, I can't see that. And what I saw was like, put me in the mind of what I know today to have been the look of Emmett Till's face. And I was like, oh my God, no, and I wanted to tell, well, I did. I actually told my kids, I don't think y'all want to see him. I didn't look myself, but just the glimpse on Monty's phone, I don't think you want to see him. Well, my children were strong enough and they wanted to see their father. And so they went and they saw him in the back. They went in the back to see him. And my daughter was strong enough to take photos. She took photos of him. After she took photos of him, I didn't look at the pictures. I never wanted to. I couldn't see them. At any rate, after months went by and we were getting no response over the phone or through our letters or emails, we went back down there August the 14th. August the 14th, when we went back down there, we mentioned that we had sent the open records request. No one responded to it. They blamed it on lack of resources, and they would give them a couple of days and they'll get that response to us. We shared with them the photos that my daughter had. I didn't know that she took them photos at the time. I just didn't know it. When she told the deputy that she saw those photos, it was clear on the deputy's face that, something's wrong here. Because in the photos, you can clearly see a gash in his head, and you can see the blood coming out, and you can see blood splatters going across his face. So that's what's on the photos. Once she showed him those photos, Deputy Chad Campbell got the phone and called Texas Ranger Josh Engelman. Josh Engelman then talked with Deputy Campbell for a good 10 minutes or so. Well, Deputy Campbell kept covering his mouth and talking on the phone like he was whispering. And I'm like, why are you whispering? We're the only ones in here. This is why we're here. You open the door for us. Nobody's in here. Why are you whispering? Well, he walked away from us talking to Josh Engelman and went to the back of the station and continued his conversation. Then he came back and wrote down Josh Engelman's name on a card and said, you guys will call him and he will likely take over this investigation. Make an appointment with him. He'll most likely take over this investigation. He's the Texas Ranger for this jurisdiction. Okay. So with that being said, it's also clear that the body camera was on the officer that actually was on site, because they end up sending a police report June 13th. This happened April 7th. They sent me a report June 13th in my email. And in that report, down here, it says, evidence collected, video evidence collected. It's yes. And then it says evidence type, body camera. Clear as day. It's right there, body camera. So we have asked them for that body camera video over and over again, and they will not release that to us. And I know it's going to tell the story, because another thing, the guy at the House of Yahweh that quote unquote found Mark said he immediately, he and I want to say he said his brother took Mark off the bed and laid him flat on the floor and began administering CPR. And when he began administering CPR, Mark began gurgling blood immediately. So he stopped. So when he said that, I said, wait a minute, because you don't get blood from CPR. You get air. Now, if he was gurgling blood, somebody either poisoned him or beat him up and his ribs was broken and his lungs was punctured, something. But you're not going to get blood. At any rate, I immediately thought, y'all, somebody poisoned him. That's how he died. And that was my thing. That's what I believed. That's what I thought for the longest. Somebody poisoned him. Fast forward to August 14th when we were there in Clyde, Texas, in Callahan County. But actually, it's Barrett, Texas, where the sheriff's office is. We went to Barrett, Texas, which was about 10 minutes, 7 minutes away. While we were there, we told them about the fact that on the report we got in June, it says the body camera was on and that we had sent you guys an open records request asking for that. Nobody's responded. And of course, they still haven't responded to this date. They still have not responded to this date for that body camera. At the end of the day, Mark was killed there. We're looking for answers. We need help to get this county to respond to us. We need help to get them to complete an investigation before the statute of limitations is out on all of the information that we have to date related to this whole murder. That's what I'm going to call it. That's what it is. If you can inbox me online, if you can send me a phone number or whatever, I will call you back. I will communicate with you as soon as possible. Like I said, we are looking for some guidance. We need to know what to do next. Through it all, I have been in touch with several agencies trying to get some help, trying to get some answers. We have talked to, I have a list, the J.P. Rumsfeld. I've talked to Monty, the funeral home director, talked to Deputy Chad Campbell, talked to Deputy Mark Alamed, talked to well, we didn't talk to DA, but I've been emailing him, the DA Shane Deal. I emailed the county attorney, Ashley. I emailed the mayor. I emailed the city council, the city secretary. The city secretary did respond, and just to tell me they were closing their open records request and that they didn't have a record of Mark's death in Clyde, Texas. However, I asked the question, how did our GPS bring us to Clyde? How was his body at the Clyde funeral home? He died in Clyde. He was picked up in Clyde and taken there, and then turned around. He was buried there and dug up from a grave without our permission or consent. What do you mean you don't have a record for his death in Clyde at the city secretary's office in Clyde, Texas? That email has not been responded to. I've reached out to the FBI. Supposedly an FBI agent reached out back to me, but I have not heard from him again. I don't believe it was a real FBI agent, and I should have never talked to him over the phone. I believe it was somebody from down there posing as an FBI agent, wanting to know what I was saying. But the truth will be told. The truth is going to be told, and I'm going to keep saying what I know until we get some help. I also reached out to the Texas Rangers, the Department of Public Safety in Texas, and I wrote a complaint to them. I also wrote a complaint to the Texas Funeral Services Commission. We can't seem to get that body camera. And I don't have the report back from the Texas Funeral Services Commission yet, so I don't know what their conclusion is. At any rate, since those photos that I know my daughter have now has surfaced, I always believed they killed him by way of poison because of the blood. But now I see that he was killed by blunt force trauma to the head, showing the gash in his head and then showing the blood spatters across his face. Bottom line is, he was killed there. Nobody's doing anything about it. We need some help. We need your support. We need some guidance in terms of what to do next. The Texas Rangers have not attempted to do an investigation. Matter of fact, one of them said they was doing me a favor by asking questions to the sheriff. I didn't ask for no favor. I don't know them. You know, they're not my friends. I don't know them. But that's what was said. That's strange. As much as I went to the various Texas Ranger offices here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I went to about 4 different offices. Couldn't talk to one. Not one Ranger was available or present or even called me back whatsoever. As much as I went to the various offices, left my name and number, went online to their website, wrote a complaint, submitted it, and no one ever called me back. And then finally, after I talked to State Representative Chris Turner's office, Tammy was very instrumental in helping me locate an actual Texas Ranger to which was over that area, West Texas. And there I found out of Josh Engelman's name. And still with that, there was just no number. It's like there was no place to find a phone number for these guys. And the numbers that I did get for the Rangers were in the Department of Public Safety. And then they would talk to me like they would take a message or whatever, but never call back, and no Ranger ever contacted me back. And I kept telling them, this is about a murder in a county. I need some help. And no one would ever contact me back. But it was not until after State Representative Chris Turner's office made some phone calls. And then finally, I got some calls back. I got a call back from, I want to say, Texas Ranger Scott Stevenson. And talked to him a couple of times. And then finally, Josh Engelman called me back. And he wanted me to understand that there was no criminal activity with the sheriff's department or something. That I don't know what he wanted me to understand, but at any rate, he reviewed everything and his case was closed. He didn't find no criminal activity and nothing. So I asked him, so what do you take with the blood? What do you think about the blood? I mean, what's your feeling on this blood? Blood? Yeah, the blood. Where did the blood come from? Well, he didn't know anything about the blood. I said, okay. So why don't you, did you look at the body camera? No. Okay, well, then don't tell me you've completed your investigation. If you haven't looked at the body camera and you can't tell me nothing about the blood, you have not completed no investigation. You need to complete the investigation and then tell me that based on what you saw, this, that, and the third, that, you know, it's closed. But he told me he was going to go and review the body camera and find out whatever else that he didn't know of that took place that the sheriff is aware of and get back to me. To this date, I haven't heard nothing back from him. Nothing back from him. So it's like they do so much, go so far, and then shut down. Say so much, shut down. Do so much, shut down. And it's being hidden. It's being covered up. It's just being covered up, period. And that is not right. That is not fair to us. It is not justice for Mark. It is not justice for this family. And I do wish and I want support for somebody to help us, give us the next step that we need to take. What's the next step we need to take? What is the guidance here? We need some direction. Who is it that I need to write to, submit anything to make them turn this thing around? I really need some help here. So if at all possible, please, whatever you can do to help us get some answers would be greatly appreciated. And I just I'll respond back. I'll come back and share more information, whatever, you know. At some point I'm gonna figure out how to interact so you guys can ask me questions and I can answer them. you know, but I need some help right now. I need some guidance. And so hopefully you just take what I'm giving you right now and just help me to make something happen in the best interest of this family and in the best interest and resolve for Mark Clayton. Thank you. I do not want to confuse anyone as I say Mama Clayton. A lot of people know me for that. And you know, Mark Clayton, my son, but it's not my son. It was my husband. It's my children's father. Okay? So the Mark Clayton that you know of, he's still alive and he's okay. My son is okay. But his father was the victim of these people down here. And if nothing less, it's a mysterious death. And somebody needs to open up the books and find out what happened. We need answers. Again, thank you, and I'll be in touch. And I hope you'll be in touch with me. Okay, have a good evening.